Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening and Happy New Year, Beverly. Good evening, Doug. How are you?
Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Good
Same
evening.
to you, Mia.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This is the first meeting
Hello.
of the new year. Oh, that's right.
Happy New Year.
Okay. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year, baby.
Hey, thank you. Happy newbie to you too. Hey, Blackwell.
Hey, Bev. Happy New Year. I said hello. You spoke. You know who you were speaking to?
No, I haven't heard you in so long. I
Oh,
almost
Lord.
forgot what your voice sound like.
That's terrible.
Yes, it
Yeah, we got to do something about that.
is. Oh. Hey, Mia, Benoit, that's the presenter?
I know that there are a few folks in from Empire. So I saw Doug. There are a few different people from the team here. I'm sure he'll introduce them.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
Yes.
Sure thing.
Thank you. Did everybody see the AMI information that Mia sent you earlier today?
I got it.
I got it too. That chart was a little weird, but I got it.
Yeah, that was a little weird too, but it has the information that we need to see. So I felt it would be helpful if we had it before our presentation so that we could go along and keep things in perspective.
Mia, are we the only thing on the agenda for tonight, or was there some other business for the committee?
There is other business, but you're the only presenter in terms of updating the committee.
Okay. I see most members of the development team here, so
Sure
I think
thing.
we're happy to get started whenever you guys are.
Sure thing. Beverly, are you ready to get started? We definitely want to be respectful of the team's time.
People, could you do me a favor? If you're a member of the housing committee, could you raise your hand, please? Could all members of the housing committee raise your hand? Are we voting on anything tonight, Mia? We're not voting on this, right?
There are no voting items. This is, informational update from Empire. And then I guess thereafter you guys will have a committee discussion regarding affordable housing.
All right. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you. So we can go ahead and get started, Mia.
Sure thing. Doug, feel free, take it away.
Thanks, Mia. Thanks, Chair Beverly. It's a pleasure to be back at CD9. For those of you I haven't met before, my name is Doug McPherson, and I'm a member of Empire State Development's real estate team. As part of the Vital Brooklyn initiative, ESD is currently working on 4 affordable housing projects in the Prospect Lefferts, East Flatbush, and East New York neighborhoods. ESD's job in each of these projects has been to select developers via RFP processes, guide the projects through environmental review and the implementation of something we call a general project plan. And finally, to negotiate the disposition of the properties via a ground lease or a sale. Tonight, I'm here with the development and design team behind ESD's most significant project in CB9, the redevelopment of 7 acres of the Kingsborough Psychiatric Center campus at the corner of Albany and Clarkson Avenues. I see the development team members here. They'll introduce themselves in a minute. We're coming to you now to provide an update since we've reached a pretty critical milestone in the project, the release of our environmental impact statement, or EIS, draft scope of work. And publishing the draft scope for us can be considered the official kickoff to the EIS process. And right now it's our opportunity to come to the public and say, we think this project is baked enough for your, formal comments and review. Later this month, on January 19th, we will host a scoping meeting where members of the public can provide verbal comments on the draft scope. However, written comments on the draft scope, which you can find on our website, esd.ny.gov/Kingsborough, are currently being accepted. And we'll continue to accept written comments until 5 p.m. on February the 21st.
Can you, for one second, before you continue forward, all those acronyms that you're using, we're not in the field. Could you kind of break them down for us, please?
Yeah, totally. So
thank you.
ESD, of course, Empire State Development, the state's economic development agency, where I work. I think I also mentioned 2 other acronyms. One was a GPP and the other was EIS. A GPP, or General Project Plan, is a tool that EIS uses. It's basically 2 things. It's one, a description of a project that ESD is undertaking. And 2, it's the mechanism that we use to provide land use changes and other sorts of authorities that are necessary to implement projects that ESD is sponsoring or otherwise supporting. I also mentioned EISs, or environmental impact statements. Often but not always, when the state undertakes a discretionary action of some kind, particularly something that affects the built environment in a community, those actions are subject to something called SECRA, which is another acronym, but it stands for the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Basically, when we are changing the land use in an area or are providing capital support to an affordable housing development, we have to demonstrate through an environmental review process what the potential impacts on the community might be and what steps the state is taking in order to mitigate those impacts, so that you don't have potential harms or negative issues arising within communities. So anytime we're doing a project at the scale, and we're going to talk about the project in a minute, the state requires us to take a look at the environmental impacts through the SECRA, through this EIS process. And so that's starting now. The release of the draft scope of work, which is about a 40-page document, you can find it on our website, is sort of the introduction of what the project is. In a few months, we'll be publishing a draft environmental impact statement, which is a several hundreds page document that looks at what we're doing on affordable housing and open space and sort of the other elements of the project through a bunch of different lenses. It asks the questions of, what does the project mean from a traffic perspective? What does a project mean from a shadows perspective? What does a project mean from a school seats and daycare seats perspective. What does the project mean to the community from a socioeconomic perspective? And it basically just analyzes a project through those, multitude of lenses, according to state law, which prescribes the kind of bare minimum of analysis that we have to do, as well as like city and state regulations that elaborate on the types of required analyses that need to be done for projects that are being undertaken. So I kind of lost my place, but maybe, to sum up for many of you guys, this will be tonight will be the first update you've seen on Kingsborough since the announcement of the development team back in the summer of 2021. So it's been about 18 months. And like over that period of time, we've been busy working with the development team, their designers, the Department of City Planning, and the other state agencies who are involved to take what we thought was a pretty strong project at the RFP stage, refine that kind of initial conception of the project, and develop it into something that we think integrates well with the neighborhood and does a good job of delivering on the goals of Vital Brooklyn. So there'll be a time for questions. And Beverly, can we take questions towards the end of the presentation? Is that how you guys normally do things?
Sure. Yes, we
Okay.
can, because they have to hear they have to base the questions on something. So yes.
Gotcha. So, that's kind of it in terms of introduction, and I'll turn it over to Joel Kochman, Vice President of Land Use and Affordable Development at Douglaston, to take us through more of the project details. So it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Doug, and hi everyone. It's great to meet you all, and thanks so much for taking the time to allow us to share this project with you. And we're really looking forward to this conversation, which, as Doug mentioned, really is the first conversation as part of our environmental review and public engagement here. Before I share my screen, I'm just gonna let you all know who we have joining us from our development team and who will be speaking. And then I'll share my screen and we'll go over some things. So again, I'm Joel Kochman, Vice President with Douglaston Development, and I'm joined by my colleagues Maggie Cherry and Liz Oakley. And from Breaking Ground, we have Dave Beer and John Betts. And then we have Donald Matheson from Alma Urban as well. And on our design team, we have Kamal Benoit from Ajay Associates. We have Phil Severton from Studio Zodi, and from Hill West, we have David West and Eric Schneider. They missed some folks, but we have a large team here, and we're really all looking forward to the conversation. And just so you know, primarily speaking will be myself, Kamal, and Phil. So with that, let me share my screen, and we will take it from there. I need permission to share my screen.
Most definitely. Let me make you a co-host. One moment.
Thank you.
You should be good to go.
Okay. Bear with me 1 second. All right. See if I can make that even a little. How is that for everyone?
You're good.
Good. Okay. Wonderful. All right. So this is our cover slide here. You'll see a lot more really wonderful images showing the project. But let me just get right to it here. I introduced a few folks from the development team, but again, as Doug mentioned, we were selected in July of 2021 as part of the Vital Brooklyn RFP process, and the team that we assembled is led by Breaking Ground, who we have Dave Beer and John on the call tonight. Breaking Ground's the state's largest supportive housing developer. They've done work throughout the city, have projects kind of all over the state, and are really well regarded in some of the housing that we're really working on in this project. Douglaston Development, where I sit, We are a developer, general contractor, and property management company with over 40 years of experience working in New York City. We have done, again, work through all 5 boroughs, a range of projects, and we have done a lot of affordable housing, senior housing, and also, market rate rental housing as well. We're working with an organization called Brooklyn Community Services, which is a social service agency who operates in Central and East Brooklyn primarily. They have social service centers, senior centers, and do a lot of programming and provision of social services. And they specifically are working with us on a senior housing component of the project. We have Job Development Corporation and Alma Urban. Both are, Job is an MWBE firm and Alma is an MBE firm. And they are working with us on our affordable homeownership component of the project. And then finally, we have the Velez organization, which is an MWBE contractor and developer, and they will be working with us on the construction phase and a portion of development too. So really excited that we were able to assemble this team of nonprofits, community organizations, MWBE participation to really execute what we imagine and hope is really going to be a value add project for the neighborhood. So, all right, so the site, so we are located on the Kingsborough Psychiatric Center, and the development site itself is the westernmost portion. So the boundaries here are Winthrop Street to the north, Clarkson Avenue to the south, Albany Avenue to the west, and then the existing to remain Kingsborough Psychiatric Center to the east. You all know the area quite well, really characterized by kind of 2 to 3 story homes along Winthrop Street. Clarkson and Albany have a bit more of a multifamily character or institutional character with the adjacent Kings County Hospital. But of course, even surrounding that, there's still quite low density as well. So, but overall, a really high it's primarily residential with a high concentration of medical and community facility uses. So the site itself, this is a 7.2 acre site, and currently on the site are 2 homeless shelters. There's the men's shelter and the MICA, which stands for mentally ill and chemically addicted. Mentally ill, chemically addicted. Thank you very much. Shelters. And so these in total have about 364 shelter beds. And part of the RFP requirements were that we were to replace the shelter beds in kind, ensuring that the shelter operations continue and never have a break in those operations. So that's certainly something that we'll be talking about in part of our proposal. Okay, so the overall goals of the project. We were responding to the RFP, which stated, some of the connecting housing and health initiatives, promoting workforce development, job creation. So these are all things that we are focusing on when developing our proposal and working on the design since selection. So the main goals for us were to provide a range of housing opportunities from affordable family housing, supportive housing, senior housing, affordable homeownership opportunities. So again, a wide range, and also having housing that's for the families low income, and we'll show you kind of the AMIs that we're anticipating there. Since we do have supportive housing here, we do have shelters here, providing high-end state, like best-in-class social services is really important, and so that's definitely a big portion of the project, and is something that Breaking Ground, with all their experience, is leading and will certainly be successful in. Workforce development. Another thing that was included in the RFP was providing a space for the 1199 SEIU, primarily for adult education and training, and also a daycare space. So we have about a 17,000 square foot space allocated for the SCIU here. Health
What
and
does that
wellness,
stand for?
the SCIU.
Yes, what does that stand for?
So the SCIU is the labor union for kind of hospital medical workers.
Okay.
SCIU. It's
Service
spelled-
Services Employees International Union.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
My mom's a member.
My screen sharing pause because I think I was going to do something. 1 second. Okay, great. Okay, and then health and wellness, again, main area of the RFP was promoting health and wellness. So we have large open space, we have promoting physical activity throughout the space, promoting passive recreation. Was there a comment?
Yeah, can I
No, there
understand why there's no
was-
parking?
So sorry, Joel. Attendees, I'm gonna ask that you be respectful of the space and please mute yourself until it is the appropriate time to field questions and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. So the health and wellness is a big component. Access to fresh food, connected to health and wellness, of course, but we will be providing a grocery store on site and then youth programming. In particular, we have the Brooklyn Ballet, who operates youth dance classes, after school programs, things like that. We're really excited to have them on board. So those are some of the things that we are excited about, and really we're driving the overall program of the site. So so here is just the high level what's there on the 7.2 acre site. We have 9 buildings, 991 units, and the breakdown of supportive housing, affordable family, senior, and homeownership units is 297, 296, 306, and 92. We have 364 shelter beds, which again is that 1-for-1 in-kind replacement. And we're going to have over 2 acres of publicly accessible open space throughout the site. One thing to note here is some of you may have already looked through the draft scope of work, which Doug was talking about earlier. And the draft scope of work has probably slightly higher numbers. And that's because we analyze the most conservative scenario. So in case there are minor fluctuations in the project and in the program, we could accommodate that through the environmental review. But currently, as designed on our end, these are the the estimated unit counts. Okay, and just to break down the housing program and affordability a bit more, wanted to share with you this slide. So we have in that supportive and family housing bucket, 50% of the units would be supportive housing, and you can see the target populations that we would be working with here. So chronically homeless individuals, individuals with serious mental illness, young adults 18 to 25, and youth aging out of foster care. And then the remaining 50% of the units will be available to households earning a range from 40 to 80% of AMI. For the senior housing units, this is split between formerly homeless seniors, which is 30% of the total units. And then basically the way senior housing works is anybody who's earning up to 50% of AMI would be eligible. So you could earn, 0 AMI or, $0, or you could earn up to 50% of AMI. And then finally, on the affordable home ownership piece, we have a range of AMIs available, 50%, 60%, and 80%. All right, so here I'll just quickly, introduce our design team, and then we're going to hand it over to Kamal to really show you all the images and the site plan. So again, our design architect here is Ajay Associates, a firm that's worked across the world on institutional projects, on housing projects, and on real major placemaking projects. And so we're really excited to be working with them on this project. We have Studio Zodi, which is a Black-owned landscape architecture firm, also has done projects all over the country, and again, really focused on impactful placemaking, community building projects. And then we have Hill West, who's our architect of record, working very closely with both of the other designers to make sure that all of our plans are up to code, and working with working through all of our approval processes. And they have experience working throughout the city doing some of the largest, again, most impactful projects. So we're really excited to have this first-class team working on this really important site. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kamal to talk about the design. And Kamal, just when you want me to go to the next slide, just let me know.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to walk you through the project. And we feel this, this is a good opportunity for Brooklyn, that, the project will bring quite a bit of features to the Brooklyn area that we think we need. So just overall, I will walk you through just the general massing of the building, the project itself. And starting from the right side of the page, that's the eastern portion. We have to the bottom of that page, the green building that you see, that's one of the shelter buildings. And next to that, to the right, we have a supportive housing building, then flanked by another men's shelter. And as we cross the street, which is currently a connecting point between the existing 43rd Street, we are taking it through our site, we have another supportive building. And to the north of that, we have a what we call supportive building 1. Working our way west, we have a senior building to the north, and then to the southwest, we have another supportive housing building. But surrounding that, these buildings surrounding that open space that you see in the graphic, that's the public open space. And we'll elaborate on that a little bit as we go forward. And previously, Joel mentioned the home ownership buildings, which are to the north of the site. In this view, they're not, you can't really see them due to the scale of the other ones, but I will walk you through that next slide. So here in this view, we're looking west along Winthrop. And earlier, Joel mentioned the idea of how the various scales of the projects. And here you can see to the left of the screen, what we're proposing for the home ownership buildings. These are 4-story structures that kind of mirrors what's across the street, keeping the scale of the local community. And also the idea here is to mimic what's across the street, and the idea of having nice general sidewalks, comfortable spaces leading up to the building facades, meaning that stoop culture, also keeping that within the scale and context of the neighborhood. Next slide. In what we saw in the initial slide with the massing, this is just the site plan, just so I can walk you through where we have the different features. So starting again from the eastern portion, we do have that bar of buildings where we have the 2 shelters and 1 supportive building, which are coming off of the new private drive. And the idea here was, one of the asks from the RFP was to reconnect the city grid. So we're taking 43rd Street through the site, allowing that north-south connection through Winthrop. And flanking that on the to the west, we have the supportive buildings and senior, and the 2 supportive buildings. And to the north, we have the home ownership buildings again along Winthrop. And circling back to Albany, we have our senior building to the north, and then another supportive building. Now, all of this is, again, like I mentioned earlier, is surrounding this, public open space that we feel is integral to the development and key to the community as a whole. One of the key things here, you can see Clarkson Street, which is to the south of the site. We have full, open access for the park. It's fully open to the public. It's totally visible. And the key thing with the RFP with the request was that we provide this public open space with full access for the entire community. And again, we've provided multiple locations where that can happen. You have the east-west connection coming off of Albany, tying back to the new connector north-south of 43rd Street. And off of the Winthrop Street, we have a central private access drive. Again, here's going to be limited traffic, which I can explain in the future slides what it exactly does. But again, this gives the public total access on all sides of the site. Next slide. And just here, this is just a general idea of, showing you what we feel the circulation will be around the site. The primary focus here is the pedestrian and the local user. So primary access to the site is by the pedestrian, which we think is key for, a wealth of things, safety, also just comfort for at the human scale. We do have at Winthrop, I mentioned earlier, that turnaround, which will help us give access to the Brooklyn Ballet, which is located to the right of that private drive, and also access through the site to, which I can explain later. We have a pavilion located in the center. The north-south access via the private drive connecting 43rd Street back through Winthrop. Also, as mentioned earlier, the east-west connection, that major axes, giving us access from Albany Street. And then the full access, as you can see, there's many entry points along Clarkson Avenue. Next slide. And this view, just want to illustrate like the scale of the buildings, but also just taking us to, this is a view looking north along the new private drive that connects Clarkson to Winthrop along the 43rd Street access point. We're featuring here the building. One thing that was key to the design is having a common form for the buildings, but also finding ways to differentiate them as we move through the projects. And part of that is to be able to scale it, repeat it for future developments as we go through the Vital Brooklyn development throughout. Key things here we want to highlight is that generous pedestrian paths. The sidewalks are large scale sidewalks with greenery, landscaping. Also, we maintain, given Joel mentioned earlier that we're providing the supportive programs throughout the site. And one key thing here is to have the pedestrian understand that this is accessible. We have a fully transparent ground floor plane, which also provides a nice consistent street wall along 43rd and the other streets for the future phases. This view is phase one of the project, which as Joel mentioned earlier, we have to keep the shelters functioning, so they will be built in the first phase. So to the north, we have one shelter, and to the south, we have the other, the green and yellow respectively. Next slide. Here, just want to highlight a few of the connecting programs that I just mentioned about, and the transparency into the buildings, given users that access. So we have several partners, as we mentioned earlier. 1199 SCIU, Brooklyn Ballet, to the north, where again that private access drive provides a nice low traffic area where parents could drop their kids off to get into Brooklyn Ballet for services. It's safe. Due to the fact that it doesn't run all the way through the site. Again, we have the Power of Two. They're providing youth services. We will have a future grocer on the site, again, providing that option and access to quality food products within the confines of the site. And also that's open to the local community. Next slide. In this view, this is the look, standing in the public open space. And one of the key things with this view, I just want to highlight, there's a change in the materials of that side of the facade, where we brought in some warmth representing some wood texture at these facades, looking over to the open public square. And keeping in mind that, again, you see here in the view, there are awnings, which were also represented along 43rd. That also helps bring down the scale of the building to the human scale at that ground plane. And key factor here is, health and wellness, which is very important. And, we'll explain that a little bit more in detail as we go through the landscape design. But this was a key part of the RFP, is to bring that, make that key key feature to the site, and we are doing that by having the public open spaces, the greenery, etc. Next slide. In coupling to health and wellness, it's we may not think about it at it's the buildings themselves provide that shelter and safety and warmth, etc. But we do, through the passive house design approach, we're providing the building that it's going to provide optimal comfort to the user. We'll have also great efficiency from our building perimeter, which will also help lower bills, light bills, the power, etc. Another thing, there's resiliency for the project itself. We see this as a feature that we have where we do have backup generators, but these are all placed at the higher elevations. So in event of a storm, we are protected from any floods that may happen at basements, etc. There's a high range of we're providing. For example, in this view, in between the buildings, we have an upper open terraces, which in this view supports the shelters. So again, that helps with the health and wellness of overall throughout the site. We are being sustainable with the providing, solar panels where we can store heat, power for emergencies. Next slide. And again, just tying back to that, I mentioned on 43rd, we have the greenery along the sidewalks. That tree canopy provides shade, further enhancing the comfort of the user. We do have a smart of landscape features where we help curtail stormwater runoff by the different systems that we're providing through the site. And I'll leave this with you to take you to a field to walk you through the landscape design.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Kamal. And thanks again for the opportunity to share our work. I'm Phil with Studio Zodi, the landscape architect on this project. And we are thrilled to be part of this exciting opportunity. So the landscape design motivation here, taking an inventory of the surrounding publicly accessible open space, there kind of starts to be a clear picture that there's a need for more publicly accessible open space, a park, you might say. And what does exist, Jill, if you'll go to the next slide, tends to be pretty tightly defined in terms of program. And by that, I guess I mean, athletic fields or playgrounds or basketball courts. So sort of almost single use types of spaces. And so given that context and given also the goals of the Vital Brooklyn RFP, we found ourselves kind of landing at what I believe we'll see in the next slide. With this generous, open, over 2-acre park at the heart of the project. And so really critical for us was providing a type of space, such as this recreational lawn, that you could call passive recreation, meaning gathering or picnics. It could also be used slightly more actively, whether you're throwing a football or running around with friends. And so that's sort of at the heart of this park and at the heart of the project. Surrounding that is this health and wellness loop that itself is kind of nestled in the dark green there. The dark green that you see there is kind of this native planting frame that frames this big, generous lawn. And nestled in this green frame is a 1/4-mile walking loop, so sort of an exercise circuit. Branching off this exercise circuit are spaces for exercise equipment, a playground for children. You also move through a garden space. And And then Kamal mentioned the pavilion, which could host, sheltered activities, as well as provide a backdrop for any types of the activities that might happen on the lawn. You also see here kind of a play water feature, and a few terrace spaces that connect to and support the architecture on either side. And so this next slide is sort of a 3D bird's eye view of how we're at least initially thinking about the types of exciting things that could happen here. Sorry, Joel, if you'll go to the next. Right, so kind of paramount to us is visibility into the park. And so you do see a lot of trees here. The other thing we noticed in kind of studying the area is that there is a bit of an urban heat island effect happening. And so really the more green, the more trees that we can have in this space, the healthier, the area and the air itself could be. And so that's another target of ours that very much contributes to this general goal of health and wellness. And then there's a couple eye-level perspectives, I believe, that follow here. So next slide. Yeah, so here we are with Clarkson behind us, looking into the heart of this space to the recreational lawn with the pavilion beyond. And so while there are, trees that you see in the other drawings, again, it's important that visual porosity and visual connections across the site, as well as physical, are maintained. And the next image, I believe, is looking down this sort of connection, the east-west connection, which we are imagining as a important sort of east-west throughway where you walk under trees. So Joel, if you'll go to the next slide. So with kind of ample seating along this path, here we are looking east, as you can kind of see in the key plan there, with Albany behind you. So the generous open park on the right, and this tree-lined walkway with seating, and then also the sort of exercise circuit, the loop off to the right as well. And so, Joel, I guess I'll just wrap up.
Yeah, sorry if I went ahead there.
No. The images you're looking at here are focusing on the heart of this space, the big 2+ acre park, which we think could support a lot of exciting types of activities for the community, for the neighborhood. So yeah, I think that's all.
All right, thank you, Phil and Kamal. So I just have 2 more slides to finish it up, and then we'll be ready for questions. So we've talked about this huge site, a lot going on, and because it's so large, we would not be doing all of this in one phase. So we are breaking it up into 3 distinct phases. So the first phase, we're really kind of moving east to west here. So the first phase, which we would anticipate beginning construction the end of this year, beginning of next year, would include the creation of that private access drive, which continues the roadway from 43rd Street through the site. It would include the 2 shelter buildings, which have 364 shelter beds, and it would include 2 supportive housing and family buildings. And then phase 2 would include our over 2 acres of public open space, which again is really anchoring the site here, and being that really key central community amenity. And that phase will also include 2 supportive and family housing buildings and our affordable senior housing building. And then finally, our third phase will include the affordable homeownership buildings. So with that, then we just have kind of a more short-term timeline here. of where we are and where we're headed within the next year. So, as starting from all the way to the beginning, we were selected in the summer of 2021. We've been working with ESD and their consultant, their environmental review consultants, on preparing a lot of materials, working on getting the plans to the point where you see today that we feel like we have enough to move forward and start sharing things publicly. And we've really been working in earnest since the fall of 2022 on getting the public materials out there. So in January, we'll have our public scoping meeting next Thursday, and which will be a formal opportunity to submit testimony on the project. And then once we take in all that testimony, we will be finalizing our scope of work, which is the framework for all of the analyses to be done in the environmental impact statement. Moving forward to the summer of 2023, June here, we would be issuing our draft environmental impact statement and our general project plan and having a public hearing on that. And then moving along that, we would take that input, modify those documents, and seeking final approval of those documents by applicable state agencies, and then working toward the closing of that first phase of the project toward the end of the year, beginning construction thereafter. So that is all of our slides. Like I said, I know we put a lot of information out there, so we look forward to the discussion and answering any questions you have.
Thank you. Thank you for the detailed presentation. I'm assuming, given how many participants we have today, I'm anticipating quite a few questions. But if you don't mind indulging me for just a second, two things interest me. One is, how will the grocer that you're going to be placing there be decided? And two, can you give us the numbers in each AMI?
Before you answer that, Joel, Mia, I have a quick question. Is your office going to be taking notes on the questions being asked during the session? So we have a record after?
Yeah, sure thing, yes.
Okay.
We'll be transcribing.
Okay. I'll be trying to take down some questions as well. We can compare notes afterwards, but I want to make sure we have a way of like capturing all the things being brought up.
Just because of the size of the meeting, I'm going to ask that everyone remains respectful of the time so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. If you're going to make a statement, please advise that it is a statement. And if you're going to state a question, state your question with a 1-minute limit so that everyone can speak.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. So first question was the grocery store. So the grocery store itself, let me just go back to the site plan here. It's about a 6,000 to 7,000 square foot space. And so the idea is that this is a store that will, have fresh produce, essential goods, but it's not a really large store that will have, prepared foods and things like that. With that said, we definitely want to speak with, folks in the community about identifying who might be the best user for that site. We don't have a tenant currently. As you may recall, this is in the second phase of our project. And so while that's a little further out, it doesn't mean that we want to start thinking about this now. So if there are folks that you think we should be speaking to, and certain kinds of food uses that you would like to see there, grocery store uses, we definitely would be open to hearing that. Now, the second question, I just want to clarify, where you said the numbers for the AMI, are you looking for what the income qualifications would be for that?
No, the number of apartments in under each one.
Gotcha. Okay, so with that, if you give me 1 second, I will pull that up and be able to read it out. I mean, it is, and I think what we should say is these are all subject to change, and I think, here, I'm just pulling up this information. But
Subject
So
to
it's all
change
subject to change.
significantly?
It's just subject to change based on, as we work with the housing agencies. If they want to change the income mix, maybe they hear, feedback from you all that makes them change their inputs here. But in general, I just wanted to flag that it is subject to change there.
Okay.
So let me just get you some rough numbers here. Give me a second. All right, well, let me just kind of go through. So the supportive and family housing units, that is the, I'm just gonna get it right here. Okay, so we have about total there, 600 units. So about 300 of those units are the supportive housing units, and then you break that up within these categories. And then the remaining 300 units are the family housing units that will be at 40%, 60%, and 80% of AMI. For the senior housing units, we have about 300 units there. And again, with those, you have the 30% set aside. So about 100 units will be set aside for formerly homeless households. And then the remaining 200 units will be available to seniors who are earning up to 50% of AMI. The real intent of this housing is for seniors who are on fixed income, Social Security, and the income cutoff there would be 62 and up, or the age cutoff. And then the home ownership, we have 92 units total in the home ownership. And so then split between there, we have that mix of 50, 60, and 80% of AMI.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mia, are you gonna call people in the order in which they raise their hand? Or you
Sure
rather I
thing.
do it?
No, we can actually use the raise hand feature. If you are interested in making a comment or asking a question, please use the raise hand feature and we'll proceed accordingly. Yanela?
Yes, good evening, and thank you so much for the presentation. But I just wanted to, it's just a question. I thought originally that the entrance was Clarkson and when
I apologize. I don't know if it's just on my end, but I'm not able to hear the question.
Yeah, can you repeat
You're
it? I
breaking
think
up,
we lost-
Yanela.
You broke up a little bit.
I'm sorry. So the question is, but originally that the entrance to this was going to be on Clarkson. Is it now on Winthrop? It's now on Winthrop instead, I see. Is that?
The entrance to what? Sorry, we just broke up again.
The entrance to the supportive housing was originally on Clarkson.
So we have, our entrances actually really are all on, if you're looking toward the east, the residential entrances are off of the new roadway that we're creating here. So there are, and then the only entrances that are on Winthrop are the affordable home ownership entrances. That's just the only real street frontage that they have there. But on the east side, all these entrances to the supportive housing and to the shelters, these are all on the roadway that we're creating. The entrance to this building here, the supportive housing 4, is on Albany, and the entrance to the senior housing is also on Albany Avenue.
There are no entrances on Winthrop?
The only entrances on Winthrop are the affordable home ownership buildings, which are 4-story buildings. Buildings, and that's it.
Okay. Thank you.
May I ask something?
And
I'm sorry, Yanela?
so just to be respectful that everyone has a question, I'll defer. They can go ahead. Thank you.
So,
Understood.
thank you, Yanela, for that. Mia, before we move forward, you said 1 minute, right, Mia?
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna do a
Can
1
we-
minute. Sure,
Okay,
go ahead,
can
Beth.
we give them a number of questions instead of time?
Yes, I'm assuming if you can get it all in 1 minute, I'm assuming if you hear
Yeah.
duplicate, that someone has already asked, that you refrain from duplicating the
Thank
inquiry.
you.
that's already been made. Thank you.
Agreed,
received the
agreed.
questions.
Thank you. I didn't see the order in which the hands went up, Mia, so could you do that for me, please?
Sure thing, we're just gonna proceed across, hold on, let me see. Hold on 1 second. Shia? Shia's iPhone? With your hand raised, Shia's iPhone going once.
It's Haya's iPhone, I think.
Kaya's iPhone? Kaya's iPhone going
Are you ready
twice?
to ask your question?
They haven't unmuted. I'm gonna put in a request for them to unmute and move forward to Yatel.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, okay. So my question is, what are we doing to assist to help the neighborhood with the assisted living and the homeless and the shelters? Because we have some already in the area and the rate of crime has gone up and burglaries, and it's just feeling less safe in the area. So what are we doing to help that?
Yeah, for that question, I'm going to hand it over to John Betts from Breaking Ground.
Hi, sure. So Breaking Ground is a large social service agency that has a long history, about 3 decades of experience providing services to people who are currently experiencing homelessness and those who have formerly experienced homelessness. So we work very closely with the communities in which we provide services. Breaking Ground provides homeless outreach services for all of Brooklyn. And so we have relationships with many of the folks who are experiencing homelessness in Brooklyn. The shelters provide on-site case management. I can't speak to the current shelter providers because we are not currently providing the services in the existing shelters. But as Joel mentioned, one of the requirements of this proposal was to replace the shelter beds basically 1 for 1. So this is not going to be an increase of shelter beds in the neighborhood in this development. This is just essentially a 1 for 1 change, and there will then be a changeover to Breaking Ground being the service provider of those shelter facilities. So again, I'm not familiar with the current shelter provider, but the way that Breaking Ground operates our shelters and transitional housing, we provide 24-hour on-site staffing, including security staffing. We have regular community conversations with folks in the community to solicit their input, get their feedback, and adjust our operations as necessary to address issues that may come up in the community. The shelters will have access to on-site medical and mental health care in the Micah shelter, as well as some additional support in that area in the general population shelter. We're still going back and forth with DHS in terms of what exactly the frequency and intensity of those services will be, but there will be social services on site 7 days a week, case managers on site 7 days a week, and 24-hour availability of supervisory staff to intervene in situations that warrant higher level intervention.
Right, because I see over here that you're putting in a lot of senior citizens and making a playground area for children and a walk area for, young. Those are the most vulnerable in our community, the seniors and the children. We need to keep them more safe. Is there any way to go down instead of doing 1 bed for 1 bed to minimize and not put in as many homeless people, please? For our children's sake and for the seniors' sake, really, the crime has gone up so much since these homeless shelters have come. We have one on our street and it's really terrible. My kids are scared to go out in the street because of the people that, shout out of their windows and do really dangerous and scary things.
Kaya, if I could jump in, I think John's answer to your initial question was really good. I also will not speak on the existing shelter providers in the two buildings that currently house shelters within on the Kingsborough campus along Albany Avenue. But I will speak to the condition of the buildings. I mean, the buildings were created around the New Deal era. They are extremely old and they weren't originally constructed for a homeless shelter purpose, and they're not ideal for that purpose today. And so little things that you guys in the community have probably noticed, that like loitering around the entrances of those shelters, like part of those conditions exist because the design of those buildings and design of the homeless shelter campuses doesn't really accommodate the shelter clients having their own private spaces to go, take a smoking break or recreate or get some fresh air with privacy. And one of the features that the Breaking Ground and Douglaston team thought was important to incorporate in their new shelter design were these private spaces, outdoors. I think they're going to be rooftop spaces as well as like terrace spaces on the first or second floor level, where shelter clients will have spaces of their own, which is an option that they don't have now. And I think will alleviate some of the issues that folks have complained to us about over the course of the past 2 years.
Thank you very much.
And one just, Doug, put another thing too is the design of the ground floor of the buildings. The idea is to have very transparent views in and out of the buildings, which will, constantly provide eyes on the street. So I think there's that level of, as I said, eyes on the street based on how we have configured the ground floors, having both eyes on the open public space and also the streets that the buildings reside on. So I think that will also help, in addition to the above second level outdoor terraces for the shelters.
Thank you.
Yatel, we have a hand raised by Yatel.
Yes, hi. So first off, I just want to say that all of this gorgeous vegetation, the grounds, the trees looks fantastic. I'm really, really looking forward to bringing my children here. Sorry, that was my baby's toy. And so we're really excited for the grass. Yes. I think one of you mentioned there really aren't any nice parks in a significant radius from this spot. And I'm really hoping that we can make the best of the space that we have and make it a community space that all people feel welcome to and safe in. I'm going to, because currently, as Chaya mentioned, currently what's happening is that we have somewhat of a bottleneck on Albany Avenue, and there are many people, most of them single men, over the age of whatever it is, but they are mostly men and they are uncomfortable to be around, not safe for children and adults. Okay, women, men, children, many people many of my friends, many of my community members have noticed and mentioned that they feel unsafe walking past these people. And the suggestion mentioned of having eyes on the ground, that doesn't really, as a pedestrian, I don't know that your eyes are on the ground. I need to see an law enforcement agency. I need to see somebody who is going to tell me that this homeless person, or unfortunately this person who is on substances, is not going to harm me. And right now we don't have that in our community. I think that really needs to be number one in the purview. Whoever is in charge of this or is able to contact the correct people, it really needs to be made priority. Number two that I want to say in addition to security is in terms of the car traffic. You're gonna have two-way car traffic on Albany Avenue, and as I understand, there's going to be one-way traffic on 43rd going from Winthrop to Clarkson. Am I correct?
Yes, and that will be going north from Clarkson to Winthrop.
No, Clarkson,
Okay,
Winthrop, yeah, Clarkson.
so is there any plan for a second road going the opposite direction at all? Because there are many, it's like I said, it's a bottleneck. Is there any way we can make it two-way?
Making it two-way would be, I think, we've already spoken with DOT about this roadway, right? And what it is, it's continuing the direction of the existing 43rd Street that's just south of Clarkson.
Okay.
So making that particular road two-way wouldn't really work from a traffic and flow perspective. And then as you can see throughout, there's not really another opportunity for us to introduce another road that kind of bisects the site. Just for the housing program, for the open space program, I think it would really be quite damaging in terms of the overall impact, in particular of the open space here, because that's our big opportunity to get that really large public area that I think, as you mentioned, is something that I think a lot of people will be looking forward to.
Okay, well, okay, got it. May I make a suggestion in terms of cars and car parking is perhaps we can think about an underground car park like they have in the city. I know there's a lot of people with cars and vehicles, and especially if you got the ballet studio, you're gonna want some people to park their cars. Maybe we can incorporate an underground parking lot. That was my suggestion about car parks. And last thing is, we're gonna have a community center. The community would really appreciate a pool. That's it. Thank you.
Let's bear in mind, everyone, we have 75 people in the room. 5 people are probably on the design team. So, and we want to get as many questions in as possible because questions are ideas. So let's keep just the meat of our questions so we can move through the raised hands as quickly as possible. Okay?
Thank you, Beverly. David?
Okay, I had a few questions here. First of all,
what are your most important ones, David?
Yeah, my most important is generally why this community, it looks like they're keeping on coming with new projects to build new homeless shelter and new assisted living. And my kids, sometimes they get shouted out on the street when they're waiting for the bus. We're having Amazon packages stolen from front of our house. Bikes were stolen. It makes, even if they have security in the building, what would they do regarding the security outside of the building? People leave the building. It changes the whole landscape of the community. And for example, when they were building public houses back, this is what I was told years ago. They tried to bring in the public housing into the community, but a lot of people just ended up fleeing from those areas. And the second question is regarding, they're adding hundreds of units, and what's going to be with all the parking? There's not enough parking. So that means that the people that live here are going to lose their parking. So those are, we want to know if there's any, why this community keeps on getting all these new projects for, why here out of other places? Let's say Park Slope, or there are other places to build these things. What makes this community like the victim? I don't want to say the victims, but why does this community have to deal with all this?
Guys, can you answer that?
I could address the parking issue. Joel, do you want to talk a little bit about security?
Yeah, sure. So I think on the security side, John spoke a lot about the approach and how Breaking Ground manages the buildings, and it's really security is our priority. we also will be, having site-wide maintenance and operations of the space, and part of that will include security. So I think it's really helpful to hear a lot of the feedback about what you all are experiencing around this area currently and what we could potentially anticipate. And I think taking that back as we continue to develop our site-wide maintenance and operations plans, I think we'll keep that really at the top of the list, so we could really put security at the forefront and make sure that these comments are addressed.
Can I just say,
including
Also, bear in
outside,
mind for a
outside
second,
of,
And that
sorry.
includes, yes, that includes outside of the building. That's what I was
Like-
specifically mentioning.
L-
So
like a few blocks away, within the few blocks radius where people come.
Correct. Yes.
And also politicians change. That means we could have now a mayor that will send, puts out a lot of police, and then in a few years could
Depends on
change a
your
different
community.
mayor. I'm sorry?
depends on your community.
But it also, and then a few years later could come in other politicians that will put less police or less security, or there could be a new management company that takes it over. The current, that means, what's the, we're talking about long-term, in 5, 10, 15 years, how would it affect the people that live around it? And especially, all the children when they wait for the bus stop in the mornings, or when they come off the bus in the afternoon, that's more of my concern. And not
May
now.
I suggest, hold on for a second, Breaking Ground, I've seen them all over the city. One thing about them, as opposed to many others, they have a resume, and we can go to either one of their sites. I invite everybody in this room to pick a site that Breaking Ground covers and go to their site and ask questions of the community. When we're talking about security, Breaking Ground is waiting to address some of the questions that were asked by the last person. Breaking Ground, would you speak, please?
Yeah, thank you, Beverly. So our staff are required every hour to go out and do a community, we call it community rounds, to do a walkabout in the community to see if there are clients in the community, and if they're in the community, that they're doing what they should be doing in the community, not creating an issue. If they're doing otherwise, to attempt to address the issue. If necessary, calling 911 if they're creating a real disturbance in the community. We work really hard to support our clients to move through transitional housing into permanent housing, where the goal is to integrate them into whatever community they end up moving into permanent housing in, that could be anywhere in the city. We also work very closely if there are particular times, days, sort of events happening in the community, making sure that we're coordinating with community members to make sure that the community rounds are happening at a particular time or with increased intensity during, the mornings when kids are waiting for the bus, or the afternoons when kids are getting off the bus. We work really hard to be good partners in the community and expect our clients to do the same in our facilities. As Doug mentioned, the shelters that currently exist don't have a lot of opportunities for private space inside the building. And so people tend to go outside and hang out outside. We've worked very hard with the design team to create appropriate spaces within the facility for people to be able to have some privacy and spend time recreating or engaging in leisure activities in the facility, so they're not unnecessarily creating disturbances in the outside community.
So if people are not okay regarding the parking, I guess someone else will address, because it's going to be it's almost 1,000 units. That means that 1,000 people that have their cars now parked on the street might have to compete with new apartments. But the main thing, it could be, I want to think, I do want to think over what you're saying. But if people are opposed, if some people remain opposed, are not happy with this type of project, what's their recourse? Who are they supposed to speak to? Who are they supposed to go to? If they're supposed to speak, I guess, to the community board, to who are we? If we feel that we have already more than more than the average, more than, you know, our fair share of this type of housing? Who do we speak, you know, what's our recourse for that?
So, I mean, I can jump in to deal with David's second question or his last question, and then the question about parking. On the recourse question, I mean, ESD is accountable for the project that's being proposed here, and we are required by state law to hold a public hearing process, or to hold at least one public hearing on the general project plan for the project. So without a GPP, this project doesn't happen. The GPP allows for the zoning, it allows for the ability to create the amount of affordable housing that we're contemplating here. It allows for the creation of the open space. And so there will be an opportunity later on this year for folks who have concerns to either express those verbally at a GPP hearing or to provide written comments. I also mentioned that the document that we recently released, the draft scope of work, is currently on ESD's website, and we're taking comments on that document as well over the course of the next few weeks until February 21st. And so that is another opportunity, an earlier opportunity for members of the community to provide their feedback on how the environmental review is going forward and the project more broadly. On parking, you know, this is an issue that I think is sort of an appropriate time to examine. As I mentioned, there are a variety of different topics that the environmental impact statement is going to cover. I mentioned some others before, like daycare and shadows and traffic. Parking is one of the issues that will be covered in the environmental impact statement. And we are going to take the project that's proposed today, analyze it, and determine whether the project is going to create a significant parking impact or significant impact on the availability of parking spaces in the surrounding communities. As a result of that analysis, there could be a few different outcomes. One outcome may be that the analysis finds that there's no significant impact on the surrounding communities. Another possibility is that the analysis might identify significant impact on the surrounding communities. And then the question becomes, you know, what will ESD in partnership with the development team do to mitigate that impact? And it's ESD's policy over the course of recent projects that we have executed throughout New York City and throughout New York State, that if we are introducing significant environmental impacts to the surrounding community, that we do incorporate some amendment to the project that provides for adequate mitigation of those impacts. We don't like to, you know, shake things up without creating some remedy. So, you know, this is the appropriate time for us to be looking at that issue. It is an issue that will be, you know, written up extensively within the environmental impact statement, and members of this community will have ample opportunity throughout the year to provide their feedback on whether they feel that the measures that are being undertaken to address any parking concerns are adequate or not. You know, this is the process that's created for us to discuss these things.
Okay, so that means further on in the year by these meetings,
David?
just to clarify, I know that everyone's waiting. So further
Yes,
on.
exactly. So let's demonstrate a courtesy. You've asked multiple questions now. So let's move on to the next person because they too feel their question is important. Okay, so take down the email and write any additional comments or questions that you may have to the developer, please. Thank you. Next person, Mia.
Sure, we have Avi.
Hi, and thank you very, very much for this. I think many of us were happy to see the open space plan, as I think Haya had mentioned, the cut through on 43rd in concept could be very welcome. One thing I'm really interested in, and I do want to register also the two points that many had mentioned. The safeguards about security are reassuring in concept. I really, really hope that it's a high priority to ensure that it can be done in practice, because that is something that many of us feel on a daily basis. Some people have been harassed, some people have been screamed at, especially young children. That's something that really makes a mark. So I do want to register that, as well as the parking issue, which is a little bit alarming to what's being proposed relative to the units being built. My main question is about the housing need already existent in 11203. Many young families, growing families stuck in apartments today who are scrambling for some larger, condos, homes, at 3-bedroom, et cetera. What percentage do you project this is going to help those living already in 11203 versus airdropping others, probably deserving, but from other areas into this community, ultimately at the expense of those who really need space like this?
So for the housing lottery, for the family units, which I think is kind of the target population you're talking about here, that comes with the 50% community board preference. So, and that's typical of a lot of the projects here. So 50% of the units would be, from the community board.
And that's 50% of the 40% of the total project, though.
Yeah, of just the affordable family units, yes.
Right. So that means 60% of the project total, which is over I don't know, 4 acres or something.
7 acres.
Is 7 acres. 60% of that is already cut off as a new, bringing new people in.
That is for, the supportive housing populations or affordable senior housing populations, specifically.
Okay, so my proposal, but what I would love to see is some way, again, to accommodate over a 7-acre property, those who need housing, but in some way to really increase those who are really scrambling for housing in the community already. If that ratio could switch the other way, I think you'd still be able to help those who need supportive housing and really make it something that can support the community that's here already.
Yeah, if I could add a couple of things onto that, Joel. So Avi, I think what Joel described is what we can commit to today. The 50% community board or local community board preference for the family units that would be distributed via lottery. I think we still have to have discussions with Homes and Community Renewal. We don't have an HCR representative on the call tonight, but we still have to have conversations with them with respect to the home ownership pieces and the extent to which there may be a preference for local residents. And then the senior piece is something that we still have to work out as well. Unfortunately, we don't have all the details finalized tonight, but you can consider where we are in the family housing as like our starter point in terms of what we think we can do in terms of a local preference or a local set aside, and those details have to be worked out later.
Okay. I appreciate that. And just to reiterate, I'm not only talking about the preference for the family units planned, but to actually plan many more family units as a ratio of the project.
Understood.
Thank you.
I'm just noticing that my slides aren't up anymore, which is fine. I just want to make sure that whoever is doing the screen share is aware of that.
Thank you. Next question, Teresa. Ms. Westerdahl?
Oh, I wasn't next, but I'll go. I'm wondering about the, I didn't see any plans for any solar. I didn't see any bikes. I didn't see any bike racks. Parking is going to be a big problem. I don't see any any plans for EV charging of any kind in this proposal. That's what the future is going to. And I don't see any of that. I'm also concerned about trash. Like I'm on the Environmental Protection Committee, and we've got a lot of complaints about trash, about rats, about recycling, about all of that related, and flooding issues as well. So I did hear something mentioned about water flooding, but I don't really see like infrastructure coming here that there's a need for all of this happening at all.
Yeah, let me start with a few of the things that you pointed to. I mean, and again, the plans that we're showing you and the images that we're showing you are pretty, they're high level and conceptual. But starting with solar panels, where we have a sustainability consultant on board. Their name is Bright Power. They do projects all throughout the city, and where we can, we will be putting solar panels on our roofs here. And that really just comes down to cost feasibility. So, and the amount of roof space that's available for that. So that's always something that we're going to be working toward where possible. On your, I'm going to kind of just how I remembered your points, but on trash, we also have a consultant on board looking at trash collection, trash pickup, and just the best way to organize that. And we will be, as I mentioned before, as part of our site-wide like maintenance there. I mean, each building will have its own, system for trash collection, trash pickup, but there will also be site-wide work to make sure that the new streets, the open space, everything, all that trash is collected. It's not, the spaces won't be littered and cluttered and dirty.
It's not going to be put out on the street, because that's what's happening currently in all these developments, is the trash is going out on the street.
Yeah, so I will, on trash day, we'll have to go out onto the street, and we'll have to work with DSNY to identify those pickup points. But again, we're really working to make it all coordinated and that it won't become burdensome there. So then on the other items that you raised, bike racks. Each building will have bike racks or bike storage, and we'll make sure, and each, like, not the shelters, but the actual residential buildings, there'll be bike storage there. And we don't have the detail yet for kind of our streetscape here and that we're showing you, but if we're hearing that bike parking on the street surrounding is important, that we can continue to explore that as well. I'm sure I missed one of the other items that you raised.
Well, we'd like a pool, and we'd like an opportunity to have people garden as well. With all that space, you can put that in there.
Yeah.
People growing their own food, gardening, and
so that's great feedback on the gardening. It's certainly something that we've talked about, and I think happy to get the feedback and to continue to explore that option.
Yeah, Joel, I was just going to chime in also in terms of stormwater infrastructure, the park space, the area surrounding the park will be, designed to absorb as much stormwater as we can and kind of mitigate the impacts of these larger and larger storm events.
some of our neighbors, the redesign that DOT has put in has increased the flooding. In fact, it's created quite a big problem in that area as well. People come to our meetings.
Thanks, Mia.
So, okay, there's a few people that were ahead of me. I mean, I feel like I was the last one to put up my hand. So
Okay, thank you. Mia, the next person, please.
Sure, Ellie.
Hi. Just want to reiterate a couple concerns that people brought up. Number one, the security, and I know you addressed it nicely on the property. But I think the big concern is for the surrounding blocks. Just yesterday, I had the NYPD at my house. Somebody was relieving themselves on my front steps. My kids see all the time heavy drug use. That's addition to being harassed at all times of the day on Albany Avenue. I know for the most part, it was contained to Albany. Now it seems like it could be a problem on Troy Avenue as well, as you're opening up the area to that neighborhood with that new private street. So I guess that's the first issue. The second thing is parking. There is a serious parking problem here already. I know there's another development plan for Schenectady, over 100 units. It's just going to be unbearable, and to make such a size project without even one parking spot in the plans, I think is shocking. Finally, there's a major sewer issue. I don't know if you guys are aware that are addressing it, but every time there's heavy rains, the homes on Winthrop and Hawthorne and Midwood, and I'm sure Rutland as well, but I know those blocks get major backups. So I can't imagine what such a project would do to the sewer system. There's some other concerns, but I guess we'll leave for others to get a chance as well.
Guys, before we move forward, can you share your email? Because there are a lot of good suggestions coming in here tonight, this evening. Could you put your email or share it with Mia so that the individuals who are unable to get all of their thoughts in, that they can email you with them, please?
Sure, and it's not just me. We have a team here.
That's what I'm saying.
We're
That's what I'm saying.
specialized in a variety
Or
of
maybe it
issues.
would be best if anyone who has a question or concerns or doesn't just simply feel like speaking tonight, they can forward their questions to bk09-1@cb.nyc.gov, and we'll forward it over to Doug and the team so that they can review it and respond in kind.
Did everyone in the room get that?
And I don't
Could you
want
repeat it
to.
again, please, Mia?
Sure thing. It is bk09-1@cb.nyc.gov. Additionally, you may go over to the CB9 website and use the contact form and simply drop your question there.
Okay, thanks, Mia. Next
If you
question.
don't mind addressing my concerns, please. Thanks.
You're welcome. Next question, please, Mia.
Sure, Mr.
And,
Sorey.
I would
I
also
just asked-
I would also encourage, Jay, before you jump in, I would also encourage folks, as you're bringing questions to the community board office directly.
Sorry, I waited for my
Also
turn.
to be,
Mind addressing the questions?
I'll keep my comments until after Jay's questions.
Yes, the stormwater issue is the one that stuck with me, and I think on that, I don't think it's something that has been brought to our attention. We do have obviously a civil engineer working on this project. They are working in coordination with DEP, and I think this is something that we could flag to them to make sure that A, they're aware of it. B, they could flag this in their ongoing conversations with DEP, and we could discuss if there's anything in particular that we can or need to do to accommodate. Can you remind me of the other two questions?
Yeah, just the the security issue, the safety of the surrounding area, not just the new property, which by the way would be a shame for such a beautiful place not to be able to use due to security issues. But again, just the surrounding areas, how do we plan to address that? I know you have security and outreach on the property, but the surrounding areas.
Yeah, John had mentioned that earlier, and maybe John, if you don't mind repeating that point.
Yeah, so we do include the surrounding areas in our community rounds that staff do every hour. And as Joel mentioned, as part of this process, there will be a larger conversation about sort of a site maintenance and security plan writ large for the site as a whole, and Breaking Ground will be actively involved in those conversations to make sure that security in the surrounding area is being addressed, and that issues relating to the people experiencing homelessness or those who are in the supportive housing units receive the adequate services, and that those considerations are included in the bigger maintenance and security plan for the site and the surrounding community.
Okay, Breaking Ground doesn't manage the current shelters?
That's correct. We do not manage the current shelters on this site.
That is right.
Okay. And about the opening up those issues with the surrounding areas to Troy also, in addition to it just being so to speak contained to Albany. How do we avoid that?
So in opening to Troy, our site doesn't extend to Troy.
I mean, the opening on Winthrop is pretty close to the Troy Avenue throughway.
I guess Troy is the next block over. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be the same response as John just gave. I think it's the street workers, people will really be going out and looking in the surrounding neighborhood to make sure that folks are you know,
Okay,
are
and I guess
doing what they're supposed to
issue
be
was the
doing.
parking. How do you bring up such a major project without even, in the initial planning of one parking place?
Yeah.
I feel like it's a
So,
disregard to the neighborhood around,
I mean,
So,
so a few things. Doug, I think said it very well. I mean, this is, we're kicking off a public process where, we want to hear these kinds of comments. And I think addressing those as part of the draft scope of work, public hearing is something that we look forward to hearing more about. And then just kind of second on top of that, typically between Breaking Ground and Douglaston and our other partners, a lot of the kinds of uses that we're developing here and, residential community facility uses, we typically don't have parking associated with them, or when we do, it's really underutilized. So for instance, in supportive housing projects, supportive family housing projects like these, it's norm in our practice to not have parking. Same with senior housing projects. And I think both Douglaston and Breaking Ground, when we've had parking in senior projects, it's incredibly underutilized. I think, I understand that there's already a big parking issue in the neighborhood. And there's, and that's something that, we've been made aware of for sure. But I think from where we're coming from, it's these types of uses, we typically just don't include parking with them. And but noted that this is a really, really large site. It's a lot of units. And I think the upcoming opportunities for public engagement through the draft scope of work public hearing, specifically next Thursday, I think we anticipate hearing a lot more about this.
I know you don't have to make parking, but I really think it'd be a good idea, it'd be a good outreach to the community, especially that we know that it's just impossible, such a large project, not to have, need for parking. And I guess just my last point was just to note again, if you could just look into the sewer issue, because for the last year, we had a few storms and many, many homes here, had to reach out for government assistance and FEMA and whatever the other programs were, but total disaster for many homes here, which hasn't happened in years. So it's definitely something to seriously look into. And with that, I guess, thanks for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for raising that. That's really important. I appreciate that.
Mr. Sword?
Thank you very much, Amir. Before asking my question, I want to know, Joel, if you want to clarify, there was somebody asked a question about, is it going to be open on Winthrop Street? Are there any openings? Because right now there's like a fence and it's closed. So just before I answer my questions, I see a cul-de-sac. I'm looking at the survey. I see a cul-de-sac, and I also see the other street that's by 43rd that you go through. So you want to clarify, it's going to be open on Winthrop. So if somebody is, let's say, a lot of people have a concern for, let's say a mentally ill person who maybe has an episode and they start walking off on Winthrop Street. You're in this courtyard. You could just walk off on Winthrop on either of those two places. There's a cul-de-sac and there's also a street that goes through. So it's not closed on Winthrop anymore. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the question I was answering earlier was about.
That's fine. That's fine. I just want to know if they're open. That's all. That's all.
Yeah, those are roadways that.
Okay, so the answer is yes. Yeah, the answer is yes. I understand that. So now, what my question is the following, and I'll tell you, I appreciate, like, for instance, I appreciate Doug McPherson contacting me back, and I compliment Doug in front of everybody. He's an MIT guy. You're talking about intelligent people. Everybody on this who works for the state are really smart guys, and it's great that you can be part of it. We can have this discussion, and I appreciate being around you guys. The problem is that with such smart guys, how come you didn't come to the community earlier? In the proposal, let me just be specific. In the proposal, which I got from you guys, where the proposal by Sparrow, it said that working with HCR, we will engage with local elected officials and key communication stakeholders, including Brooklyn Community Board 9, from the project onset. That is June of 2000, and when Sparrow won the RFP, it was I believe a year and a half ago, and it specifically says on page 122 that from the onset, it says we anticipate the initial community planning process will commence immediately filing the agency awarded the RFP. So if you were awarded the RFP, Sparrow was awarded the RFP project in a year and a half ago, okay, I'll tell you, I'm very disappointed that the proposal, which is 280 pages, which I read, was not given to the community until a year and a half later, okay? And they don't even have it. I did a FOIL request, okay? I'm disappointed that there wasn't this conversation a year and a half ago. Now, the question is as far as the chart goes, I'm looking at a chart that you guys have, and it says that there's, it looks like there's 764 units of general housing that's composed of general population of 427, senior citizen of 337. So you have 764 units of general housing. I'm not counting the supportive housing part of it, just the general housing, because these are people who are going to be working, 764, okay? How many parking spaces are there going to be for the 764 units, which is not the 326 of supportive housing? How many parking spaces on the 764 are you guys providing for those?
So what you're looking at is outdated. Over time, the proposal has evolved. But with that, the parking, the only parking is we have 15 street level parking spaces. I think if you want to look at the latest project information, I encourage everybody to look at the draft scope of work that's published on ESD's website.
Okay, let me respond to that and correct you. I'm quoting from exactly what you said. The 764 is from the draft, okay? It says 764 on the draft. It also references what you just said in terms of the 15. The 15 spaces are not for general housing. That's for the supermarket and all the commercial stuff, okay? So let's just be very specific. There's like 38,000 square feet plus a supermarket that you guys said was 8,000, okay? I'm disappointed that the community is being compromised in the supermarket. In your proposal, it started out as a 10,000 square foot supermarket, which is basically what people want. That's the dessert in this project. Goes from 10,000 when you submitted it. Then it goes to 8,000 in this draft statement, which was only given 30 days ago publicly. And then from the 8,000, then I heard somebody say earlier, it's 6,000 to 7,000 square feet. People should recognize that the supermarket is much less than it used to be. The parking issue is the most important thing because people in this community need cars. For there to be an entire presentation and for you guys not to say specifics and numbers, it's like you're talking to a junior high school class. When you gave a proposal, there was specific numbers, very specific numbers with everything. Before you had 24 spots. There has to be a breakdown. In terms of the general housing, we should acknowledge 764, no parking. On the supportive housing of the 326, we shouldn't fool people into telling people that this isn't housing for the homeless, okay? Because the homeless shelters are 364 units, okay? That's the old homeless shelters. Take that 364 number, remember that. The 326 of supportive housing, when you read the proposal, it's being financed by New York City Department of Homeless, okay? It also includes like maybe 100 mentally ill, but the financing when it comes to senior, and when it comes to non-senior, they're in your proposal, you're very specific. It's New York City Department of Homeless. So when we talk about the supportive housing, that's 326.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you.
That's not correct.
That's not correct.
It's in the proposal.
It's
that
not
is not
correct.
It is not what's in the proposal. And
Yes, it
first
is.
of all,
Okay.
I encourage everyone on this call, if you have not had the opportunity yet, to go to our website, read the draft scope of work thoroughly yourself. That is the project that we are proposing today. And in that project today, the homeless shelter beds, which we are replacing, as John mentioned before, bed for bed, those are being financed by the Department of Homeless Services. The supportive housing units, which are a new element that we are bringing to the site as part of this redevelopment, are going to be funded through the Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative, which is a program of the New York State Department of Homes and Community Renewal. So to be very clear, the supportive housing beds are being financed by New York State HCR, and the homeless shelter beds are being financed through the Department of Homeless Services.
Okay, so
Then
let me ask.
just to clarify the
Jay,
discrepancy
we
on
need you.
numbers.
Hey, everyone, Jay, we need you to ask your question, please, because there are at least 7 other people after you. So please ask your question
Sure.
and
I'd be
send
more than happy.
everything else in the email.
Okay, okay, fine. So my other question is in the, looking at your draft scope, task 19 on alternatives, it says, as there are no alternative sites for the proposed action. When you look at this action in terms of finding, is there any place else that we could put this, that we could put these supportive housing? And by the way, the target population for supportive housing includes homeless as well. Okay, but so on alternatives, if there's another site in New York City that isn't oversaturated, because you have to take a look at the block and you have to do a segmentation analysis. Okay, across the street, on the other side, Canva has 2 facilities which cater to the homeless. The other Vital Brooklyn, which Canva got, half of it is also homeless. Okay, in terms of the parking situation, you have to take a look at all the different projects together. You have to do a residential beds analysis. There's 8 facilities that are on Clarkson that are going to happen as a result of this for the homeless. Okay, and so my question on task 19 is, can you choose as an alternative site Rikers Island, where you can put the homeless shelters on Rikers Island, and can you build all affordable housing on this site? And furthermore, can you give us a breakdown of income bands for the various different housing that's on this, and also how many studios, 1 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms? People want to know, is there studios and 1 bedrooms? What's for families? The information that you've given is so weak.
So Jay,
Yes.
pick the 2 most important questions that you have, and please submit the others in email to the community board.
Okay.
Well, your 2 most important questions.
Okay. So the question that I have is, can you give us, in terms of what's on the table now, the same type of specificity that was in the proposal when you gave it to when Sparrow gave it to you? Can you give us the specificity in terms of income bands, in terms of a breakdown of studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedroom, 3 bedrooms for each of the various different housing?
And your second question?
And my second question is in terms of discussing the concept of segmentation, you have to take a look at, there's 2 projects for Vital Brooklyn that's happening at Kingsbrook Jewish. Okay, and with regard to the parking, you have to take a look at the parking over there. You have to take a look at the parking over here. You have to take a look at this stuff that's going on at Clarkson Estates also. And you have to combine.
Okay, Jay, thank you.
Residential beds analysis, okay?
Are you guys able to answer? You guys got that?
So on the unit mix and bedroom size mix.
Yes, and the parking, yes.
The parking, I think we've talked
We've
about
covered,
the
yes.
parking. You know, I don't think our answer is really going to be any different, but on the unit mix, we obviously have numbers, we can share them. I think if I read them out, it really wouldn't be that effective. And again, as I said, when I was going through all the numbers, these are all preliminary, they're subject to change. And the discrepancies you may see between the draft scope of work and what I shared with you are because we slightly inflate the numbers in the draft scope of work to allow for the most conservative development scenario. The numbers I share with you are our program that we are designing today.
Okay.
So, you know, maybe as part of the follow-up, we can provide you more information on the unit mix for the family units.
Okay, thank you. Next person, Mia?
Beverly, I'd like to
Jay,
say one
please
thing as a
send
point of order.
Jay.
It was
Jay,
incorrect
as a point of
information.
order.
There's incorrect
Jay,
information.
But Jay, you've been called on incorrect information as well.
Mine was not incorrect.
Wait.
Correct. But let me
In this
make my point.
presentation, there are 80 people in the room. Some just want to hear information. Some have questions relative to this project. Right now, the person we've heard for the last 8 minutes is Jay. Is that fair?
Who's the one who told you about this project for the past 6 months, Beverly? I'm the
We
only
helped
one.
create, Jay.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry, Beverly, Mr. Sword. Let's move forward. This is becoming a bit inappropriate. Thank you. Alicia, next speaker.
Person, please.
Hi, I just want to apologize about not turning on my video. It's just my internet connection is really bad. You know, I know that a lot of people on this call have been very concerned about the parking.
Listening to
So I'm just going to let you know
a unit.
what's gonna happen with that. Because this is how this functions. What they're gonna do, they're gonna claim that they did an environmental impact study, and they're gonna come back and say that there was no negative effects when it comes to parking. And the justification they're going to give is because they're providing housing for seniors, they're providing housing for low-income people, and they're providing people with homelessness. And those are the types of people that do not bring cars. You already heard him say that his other projects, you don't have a lot of parking needs. So they're telling you, oh, we're going to do this environmental review. We're going to look at all the environmental consequences. We're going to consider, you know, parking. They're not going to give you parking. They will not give you parking because they're going to say, and I've seen this over and over and over again, that the population that they're targeting does not have cars. Now, of course, if you're a senior, you're going to want to have cars because you don't have any mass transit in that neighborhood. So their excuse for not providing parking is, excuse my French, bullshit, because people will come with cars, because you're going to need cars in a neighborhood that does not have mass transit. The second thing that people need to be very much aware of is that there's a text amendment that's about to come through by Mayor Eric Adams, in which no development project will have parking. That's right, no development project. He is proposing right now through the city council that every development project in New York City has 0 parking. So if you're concerned about parking, you better start thinking about what's coming in the future. But as far as this project is concerned, they've already made all their decisions about what they're going to provide you. And secondly, what I also find very disingenuous with Joel is the fact that he has no concrete numbers about the amount of housing he's going to give, the target populations, and yet this whole project is supposed to be about how they're providing quote unquote affordable housing, and let's keep that in mind, with a target population. But here he's coming and talking about, he doesn't have the numbers. He doesn't know the prices of the apartments. He doesn't know whether they're 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms. What have you been doing for the last 1.5 years as you've been designing these projects and you don't know who you're targeting? You don't know the size of your apartments? Excuse me, so disrespectful to us, as if we're stupid. We're not stupid here. We know exactly what you're doing. And just so rooted. No, let me finish because I've heard everybody else. Excuse me. I have every right to speak.
Do you have questions?
So I'm making a statement because I've heard all of the nonsense. So what people need to understand on this call is that you better start organizing. Okay, you better start organizing your elected officials to come hard after this project, because they are going to railroad you into, we're listening, we hear you, oh yes, we're concerned, yes, we know. And then when you get to the final project, it's going to be exactly, if not worse, than what they're presenting here. And please pay attention. If you're so concerned about parking, if you are so concerned about parking, pay attention to Eric Adams' text amendments that are coming through this spring, that this winter and spring, where he is proposing no parking anywhere.
So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ellie.
May we have the next person, please?
Beryl?
What's gonna happen?
Yeah, hi, thank you
May-
for having me. Does Breaking Ground already run the homeless facility on Clarkson and East 48th?
Yeah, that's one of our transitional housing units. Yes, at the
Well-
other end of the campus.
Because I see on your website, it lists the residents as chronically street homeless men and women. So I'm wondering if any of you that are working on this project have actually been down to the community, and besides looking at the actual location of the property, have actually walked through the streets and see what's going on here. My daughter was the victim of some verbal abuse the other day, and she is 11 years old, the most confident child, and is dealing with major trauma from this and refuses to go anywhere alone right now. There are huge ramifications for putting in another facility literally right around the corner. Our children already do not feel safe in their own backyards. And I would honestly, I would love to invite each of you to come down here and take a walk with me through the streets. This is a real offer. Take a walk with me through the streets here to see what is going on, because you don't have to look for it. It's in your face. It's there. There are so many mentally ill and homeless people around here already. We are already do not feel safe. When I go walking in broad daylight, I put a tracker on myself in case something happens to me, and I'm a grown woman. Our community is already unsafe, and we do not need another project here.
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
I would be happy, Beryl, to arrange that. We can do a walk around the community. Again, we don't manage the shelters at the other end. We do manage that shelter at Clarkson and 48th. As Joel mentioned, this is not additional beds. This is just a 1-for-1 replacement. But if you send your information through the community board website that Mia and Beverly mentioned, that will make its way to Breaking Ground, and we'll be sure to schedule a walk around in that area with you.
So if Breaking Ground,
And ESD would be happy to join as well.
sorry,
And ESD would be happy to join John and you as well.
thank you. I really appreciate that. I really would love to go for a walk with you and to show you what's going on over here. If Clarkson and East 48th, if that facility is already being manned by Breaking Ground and they already have all this infrastructure in place for security, for community members doing their walkarounds, why are we seeing what we see over here? I live on Hawthorne in Albany. My entire block and the whole Albany Avenue is ridden with homeless and mentally ill people. It is completely unsafe, and I've never seen, as far as I know, I've never seen anyone from Breaking Ground walking around every hour on the hour, collecting and ensuring that our community here is safe.
Sure.
Can
it sounds like
I intervene? Can I intervene on what this woman is saying? Can I echo something that actually happened this morning that replicates a very similar scenario?
Sure.
So I live in this area. I live in this neighborhood. I don't live far from the homeless shelter. I can tell you, my wife called me this morning. She was petrified. She said my daughter, that's 11 years old, was waiting for her bus, okay, on Lenox Road. And apparently a person who, I don't know if he was homeless or he was, mentally challenged, he made number 2, excuse my French, in the street, okay, with his pants down, and told my daughter, look, come, look at what I just did. I mean, my daughter at 11 years old has to see this.
Is this the facility that's run by John, is this facility run by you? Is this the same facility the lady was addressing earlier, talking about earlier?
So I don't know specific people, right? And I'm not going to take responsibility for everything that's happening in that community because I don't know the specific people that were involved in this. But it does sound like, Beverly, it would be helpful to sort of schedule with whoever is interested to do a walk around in the area. Beryl, to your point, I'm frequently at our East Flatbush site on Clarkson. I do trainings there for staff regularly. I spend time there regularly. And so I'm happy to do a walk around in that area, and other leadership will be pleased to take part in that as well.
Thank you. I'm going to follow up with you. I really want to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to do so.
So back to my question as to why we haven't seen anyone in our area walking around, as you said, every hour on the hour, making sure that we are safe and we are secure. How come we're not seeing that?
I mean, Beryl, if I could break in, you mentioned that you live at Albany and Hawthorne. That's, I'm not sure how many minutes, but it is a distance from the current safe haven facility on Clarkson and East 48th. A thing that ESD and people in the community or the elected officials acknowledge today is that there are many elements of the condition of the current shelters that are along Albany between Winthrop and Clarkson that aren't working for the community and folks are not pleased with. And it is our hope that through this redevelopment and through bringing modern shelter facilities with more amenities for the shelter clients and with their own private spaces and some of the other elements that we've discussed, in addition, beyond the physical, and in addition to that, bringing in one of the best supportive housing and homeless shelter providers in the city to operate it, that we can ameliorate some of these conditions. Like there's several goals of this project, and that is one of them. And we had 12 teams apply to take on the redevelopment of this property, and this was the best. And we weighed their experience, we weighed their resume, we weighed the outcomes of their previous projects heavily in making the decision to bring them on to try to improve the conditions along Clarkson, Winthrop, and Albany.
Clarkson and Albany are like really not far from each other. They're really like just a couple blocks away, maybe 3-minute walk. So there's really no reason, like the two speakers before me said as well, for an entire new facility to be put literally right around the corner as one that's already in existence there. Well, it's not a new one.
Beryl, I look forward to continuing the conversation during the walkthrough.
I'll follow up with you about that walkthrough so that you can see what our community is actually dealing with and actually living with on a day-to-day, because no one that lives here, I don't think, regardless of race, of color, of anything, no one that walks around here feels safe and secure in this area.
Can we
and this
start?
is just exacerbate the problem. Thank you for listening.
Beryl, could you definitely head over to our website and use our contact form with your contact information so that we can put you in touch to schedule this walkthrough with John.
And Breaking Ground, please give us available dates and times so that everything can come together as we need it to, okay?
Yeah,
John?
I'm covering for one of my colleagues, so I don't have the contact information for you, Beverly, but I'll follow up with you, Joel, and make sure that we get something scheduled.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
So
One
we have
final thing, Beverly, as
Can
we have reached the 9 o'clock hour, we want to close out the speakers list. So we have Jill, Devorah, Jeff, and Phillips. And that's where we'll close the list. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make a quick statement. As a member of this community, we do not have the infrastructure from the city for such a project. I know you do all your studies and stuff, but we don't have the sewage facilities. We don't have the power infrastructure. There's rolling brownouts, particularly in the summer. And every time we meet with the city, they say, well, it just hasn't been upgraded in decades. We just don't have the infrastructure, and I don't see how adding 1,000 more units is helping the community in any way. That's just overloading the system. And I know you can do all the studies that you want, but the city infrastructure does not exist. And we are oversaturated with such facilities. We have way too much of this in our neighborhood. It is not equivalent to anywhere else across Brooklyn or across the city. And this is not the right place for this project. And I'm just making my my comment now.
Thank you. Next person, Mia.
Hello, hi.
Sure, Devorah. I'm sorry, Phillips. You will be speaking after Jeff. Devorah?
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Just two really quick things to echo everybody else about the security and the parking. That's definitely a big concern. But just something, if you are open to taking suggestions on the security aspect, I think a lot of us as mothers of young children would feel safer if there was dedicated security for the community space, as opposed to just relying on the Breaking Ground security calls that have been set up for the shelter itself, especially considering how the community space is going to be used by a very vulnerable segment of our population, young children. It would really make a lot of us feel a lot safer if we had, if the community space, that green area with the park and the splash pad and the grass would have its own security set up. That would definitely be something helpful. Additionally, I'm just wondering if it would be possible to consider, in addition to or instead of the ballet studio, a community space that provides for more than just a niche segment of the community, maybe something that more ages and stages and types of people could benefit from, if that's something you would consider.
But I can't open it. Could you text me the number?
Sorry, I was muted. On your first question or comment, I think absolutely it's something that we will talk with our property management folks more about as they develop the plan for all the site-wide maintenance, which includes the open space and the streets and the maintenance and the operations, and that very much includes security. So that's something that we'll continue speaking with them about and continue to develop a real full plan for that, because I think, you know, we obviously understand the concerns.
Thank you.
Then on the community facility space note, I think, you know, we can provide more information about Brooklyn Ballet. I mean, yes, it is a pretty specific program, but I do think they do more than just, you know, dance classes. I mean, it really is an after school space. I think also the SCIU is providing a different kind of need with adult training and a daycare facility. But and then we have, of course, like the retail spaces like the grocer and things like that. So I think there's not so much additional space for other uses.
Even
However,
a multi-purpose
open
might
to,
be helpful.
Oh, pardon, what was that?
Even using one of these spaces as a multi-purpose space might be helpful, especially if we could include a space that pays attention to cultural sensitivities, like having women's hours only for the training and the gym classes or whatever, like might be in the SC. I'm sorry if I messed this up. SCIU facility. Yeah. Those kinds of things. If the community could have a little bit of a voice in terms of what gets put in the community space, we might find it being utilized much more.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, and certainly something we can talk more about with the SCIU as well, making sure that there's some general multi-purpose space and things like that, like you just mentioned.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome, ma'am. Thank you. Choose the last person, Mia.
We have Jeff, and then we have Phillips, and then we're done then.
Okay.
Jeff?
Yes, hi. I just wanted, this is a statement. A lot of people have made good suggestions here, and I just suggest that a push is made to incorporate these suggestions into any regulatory and financing agreements that are, you know, publicly funded or anything like that, because obviously now that they'll, yeah, we'll do this, security, blah, blah, blah. Then 15 years from now, when everyone's gone, it's not going to be there. So just to memorialize everything in any kind of agreements and funding or whatever is being done from the city.
Phillips? Thank you, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Phillips?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I really appreciate people want to do something more developed, do something to help people. I'm going to personally, is I know it took me a long time until I was able to buy a house here. It took me a long time to search. And first of all, I do have little children. I want to reiterate what other people said. Security, I'm very worried about. And then if you look at nearby, you have a lot of people who specifically in our area need housing, because the hub, the base of their community is like 1 mile north. There's a Hasidic community in Crown Heights. So many people want to come specifically here who have young families who this is the place. It's not like they have a choice. They could just go to Manhattan or Prospect Park or somewhere else, because they need to be close to their schools, to their community, to their friends. So this is like the one space we can get. So I'm always looking and dreaming that we could do things which helps the people who are local and the community that needs to come here. And there are many spaces for many, you know, thank God, New York City is very big with millions of people, but this space right here, it's not like we could relocate somewhere else. It doesn't work. So I'm looking what could benefit my community. So if there, first of all, if there could be made the housing, I understand it brings in less money for the housing developers. But if it could be made differently, that specifically suits people who are desperately looking for housing in Crown Heights and they want to come here, then I personally would think that, wow, that'll be like a lifesaver. And again, I'm sorry, but I need to very, very strongly voice my concerns about the way it's currently proposed, because again, I spent me years and so much effort. I finally bought a house here. I'm so happy with all my neighbors. We respect each other, we get along so well. This project, I'm scared what's going to happen. It's going to make, I'm sorry for saying it so bluntly like that, but I'm scared of this one. I really am thinking for my community what could do better, and I'd have to totally replan it. And I'm just wondering how seriously my concerns are being taken. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Phillips. We asked you what you thought and you told us. So that's what the community and the developers wanted to hear. So unfortunately, that was our last speaker for tonight. And we want to thank everyone who showed up, who participated, who commented, and who relayed their feelings. Those of you who were just listening, who didn't raise your hands for any questions or any comments, please go to the community board website. If you find that you think of something later, go to the community board website and list your concerns, list your suggestions. This is not the last time that they're going to be in front of the community, but understand that this is the Vital Brooklyn project. This project is one of the projects that Diana Richardson started 5-6 years ago in her civic-minded platform. So this has been in the pipeline for quite some time. So, but now is the time for us to speak up. If there's something about it we're concerned about, something about it that we don't like, and it's not just us or them. The developer appears to want to hear what we have to say, but understand too, it is a state project. This is not a city project. So let's bear that in mind. And when it comes to social services, state, city, and local, all of them operate under a different premise. They can be right next to each other, even though the community feels they're inundated. State, city, and local place their social services based on their rules as if they're the only social service entity in that community. So that's something that we really need to be pushing back on. That's why some of us are overwhelmed and some of us don't have anything. So once again, thank you everyone for showing up, participating, and engaging. And thank our guests for their hard work and their presentation. We're hoping to see them again at the housing meeting. Do you guys have anything else to say?
Could you state the email address again?
Sure thing. It is bk09-1@cb.nyc.gov. You may also use the contact form on the community board's website, as it is routed directly to our main inbox.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Can I note one more thing, or are we out of time?
Sir, can you make it short for us?
I'm going to make it very quick. I just want to also note that I personally was penalized with a $300 sanitation bill. This was going back a while ago because of the fact that both homeless and other people, looks like people that are coming from that, people that are mentally challenged, walk down the street of Troy Avenue and literally dump their garbage in front of my house and in front of my neighbors' houses. The wind comes naturally and ends up in front of someone's house. Today it's mine, tomorrow it's someone else's. I end up with a sanitation bill, and guess who has to pay it? Me. And I'm constantly cleaning up garbage of people that are dumping garbage in the street.
Sir, may I suggest that you reach out to Community Board 9, because if you can prove that that is not of your doing, I'm sure that there is someone they can reach out to. I'm confident that there's someone that they can reach out to that can help you with that. Okay?
Thank you. Community Board 9, you said?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I've since
go to our
long
website.
paid the bill, but.
Yeah, but go to the website and you'll get the contact information there. So everyone, thank you so much. Oh, you're welcome, sir, and good luck with that, okay?
I just want to know, are my concerns going to be dealt seriously or sidelined? That's the only thing I want to know.
Sideline.
I'm sorry, sir?
I want to know, are my concerns as someone who lives local going to be dealt with seriously or sidelined as much as possible?
I can't speak on that. I can only speak on how I would handle them. That's all. And guys, we got to give people a chance.
Mr. Phillips, sorry to.
And they're holding the form for a reason. Yes.
Mr. Phillips, I mean, first of all, congratulations for getting a home in the community, and I appreciate your presence here and using your Monday night to listen to your neighbors and us talk about the project. If you want to, reach out to the community board or to me directly and expand upon some of the concerns that you raise. To be frank, I don't feel like I understand them all, but if you could put together a quick email, then we can do our best to address those as we're going through the public comments in the draft scope and as we're heading into the kind of meat of the environmental impact statement process. I don't want to leave them aside, but I want to make sure that I'm understanding them all. So I'm just asking for a little expansion.
Okay. Thank you
you.
for that. Everyone have a good night. And do not forget to go to the website if you want to do the walkthrough with Breaking Ground. Okay? Thank you.
Did you take attendance for the members?
Thanks, everyone.
It's recorded.
Okay.
Okay?
Have a good night. Thank you.
Yes.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you so
meeting,
much.
guys.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
you.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks, Doug. Thank you to your team as well.
Good night. Thank you.
Night all. Take care.
You too.